So welcome everyone to We Are Endurance webinar series. And it gives me great pleasure to have Dr. Jeff Poplarski on today with us to talk about common injuries and also how to prevent them. And without further ado, Dr. Jeff, I'm going to let you come on and tell us a little bit about your background and what you're doing in Amityville and etc.
Sure.
And he's got some cool toys too.
Yeah. I've been a practicing sports chiropractor for over 25 years. I have a practice in South Amityville. I also teach at two universities. I teach at Farmingdale State College and also LIU Post in the sports management departments there. I'm also the medical director for the Tunnel to Towers run in New York City, which is coming at the end of September. President Bush actually committed to that event for the 20th anniversary, which we're really excited about that. I'm also the wellness director for the United States Golf Association, which conducts 13 championships, along with the US Open Golf Championship. I've been doing that for 20 years too. I'm also the golf performance director up at Bethpage State Park. I work with Iona College. I work with Adelphi University. I work with Farmingdale State Athletic Departments. I work with some local high schools. So really, the name of the game for us is sports. So when Hillary asked me to come on, I said that would be absolutely perfect because we work with triathletes also and have a lot of experience in that area too.
Cool.
So why don't you tell us a little bit, let's talk a little bit about some common let's start with running and cycling injuries first, and then we can get into swimming injuries and recommendations as to what we could do to try to prevent these things from happening. I mean, look, you can't prevent an injury, but if you do certain things, the likelihood may not happen, right?
Yeah, sure, exactly. So before, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a joint by joint approach. By the time, how much time do we have, by the way?
We have until 1 o'clock.
Okay, great, plenty of time. So I'm going to do a joint by joint approach, and I'm going to talk about every joint in the body and how it reflects into swimming and biking and running. So at least your viewers and your members will get a really good understanding of all these different injuries. The first thing I always discuss is for every 1,000 hours of sports participation, most people are going to sustain 2 musculoskeletal injuries. What's a musculoskeletal injury? Something with the muscles, like a tendonitis or maybe a bursitis, or something with the bones. God forbid, maybe you get a stress fracture in your lower leg. So for every 1,000 hours, 2 injuries. So my job has always been, if I work with somebody, how do I get you down to 0? How do we get that number down to 0? And there's about 60 things that you have to do to get it down to 0. But most amateur athletes don't have the time to do those 60 things. A friend of mine, by the way, came up with a periodic chart. I think you know what a periodic chart looks like. Go back to your chemistry and biology days. Instead of having copper or gold in the periodic chart, he inserted things that people need to do to reduce injuries. For instance, he took out copper, which is a C with a U, and he put in H2O, water. Very common, right? Meaning that, muscle weight, if you look at muscles, the volume of the muscle is around 70% water. Everybody knows you got to drink water, but why? Well, 70% of the muscle volume is water. So if you don't have 70% in there, the muscle becomes dehydrated, or the ligament, anything soft in the body, by the way, has water. A ligament, a tendon, a muscle becomes dehydrated. Now that's going to really make you susceptible to hurt that muscle or tendon. So in the triathlon world, the hydration becomes super, super important. Hillary, I got to give you these urine cards. Did I ever give those urine cards out to you?
Urine cards?
Yeah. No, yeah, I'm going to get, you maybe stop by the office. They're these urine cards that are given out at the United States Olympic Committee, or Olympic centers. And all the athletes get these urine cards, and it shows you, like, if your urine's this color, what it means. If your urine is darker, what it means, which means dehydration. And what you have to do if your urine is in those color schemes. So it's a nice thing for an amateur athlete to have, because you could reflect when you urinate, say, well, this guy said it needs to be more clear, and it's not. And then it makes the recommendation, drink another 30 ounces of water. So we always want to stay ahead of the game. And the last thing about water, and I just went through this, I just worked the Walker Cup in Florida, which is the 10 greatest amateur golfers from America against the 10 greatest amateurs from Great Britain and Ireland. It's actually named after George Herbert Walker Bush. And President Bush was there also, and I got a chance to meet him. But 14 of our kids in that event went down with a stomach virus. And what happened was they threw up, they had the diarrhea. I brought out the urine cards right away. I said, until your urine is clear, you're not returning to play, to go out there and play golf, because it wasn't Florida. They have to stay on the course for 5 hours with 90-degree weather. So the hydration is just so important. So that's kind of opening statements. Let's go to the neck, joint by joint approach. You're biking, right? And your head is in an extended position. And that constant extended position could start to irritate some of the nerves and also muscles in your neck. So I see a lot of cyclists have could have herniated discs. There are shock absorbing jelly material in the neck and blocks of bone, and the jelly materials in between the blocks of bone. So that extended position could put some pressure or weakness, and the next thing you know, you have a herniated disc in your neck. How you would know you have a herniated disc in your neck as a cyclist, you would get some maybe tingling or traveling pain down into your forearm, or maybe even to your elbow or shoulder. There would be some kind of tingling or nerve disturbances into those areas. You might even get some weakness in the hands. Now, what I'm going to tell you about this neck injury with a disc in cyclists, it could potentially be a career-threatening injury, because when you are on that cycle and you are extended, because you have to be in that position, it's going to be very difficult, because it will increase or exacerbate that neck injury. So disc herniations, we have to be really careful. The neck, so how do we prevent that? The neck has 6 range of motions. It's really basic. Flexion, which you go down to the chin. Extension, which you look up. Rotation to the left, rotation to the right, and then bending to the left and bending to the right. What I would suggest any of your members is just go in front of a mirror and look at the movement. For instance, some people can only rotate this much to the left and then maybe have 80 degrees to the right. And that's asymmetry from right to left. That's going to be like an area that could potentially get injured. So my treatment for you on your own is just range of motion exercises for the neck. I'm just going to give you one basic one. It's called a star. You're going to take your chin. You're going to go into your armpit, full motion into the armpit. There's a star up here on the right-hand side above your shoulder, and you're going to go up and you're going to look at the star. These are just called stars. You would maybe do it 15 times on the left. You go to the right, stars. Take your chin. Don't hike your shoulders up when you do it. So let your shoulders go. I just want pure neck movement. Into the armpit with your chin. Here's the star up here, and then look up at the star. This is what's called coupled movements. So you have multiple movements in this position. So before you get on a bike, you got to do 50 stars to the left and 50 stars to the right to make sure you have good movement, which then will reduce the chances of you ever having a herniated disc in your neck. Do you have any questions about the neck? Anybody on?
So is that 50 or 15?
50, 50, 50.
Okay.
So yeah, so that would be a good thing to go. So anything else with the neck? I just want to make sure that's clear with that. You know, I work with a lot of different athletes, and here's the story with the neck. The neck is like the fuse box of your whole entire body. So this is an area where if you ever did have a neck injury and it became it could be career threatening. I know if you have a neck injury in football, it's career threatening. You have a neck injury in lacrosse, it could be career threatening. So we just don't want that to happen. Yeah, Hillary, do you have something for me?
I was just going to say that for me, when you go arrow, your neck, you really have a lot of pressure on the back of your neck. I mean, I have this like, well, I have this like bump in the back here that it gets like inflamed all the time. Is there anything to do about the inflammation? I mean, should we like just ice it after the bike or?
Great question. As you know, I'm a wellness provider. So let me give you the whole story on inflammation. Inflammation is irritation, right? So if you're in that extended position and you do have a disc herniation, by the way, a disc looks just like an onion. Cut the disc in half, look down at the onion. That's what a disc looks like. The inner portion is tight. The outer portion's a little loose on the onion. The outer portion moves and hits a nerve. As soon as it hits that nerve, the inflammatory process starts, inflammation. So you go to an MD, what do they give you? They give you an anti-inflammatory medication. They give you a pain medication. There is a whole nutritional protocol. Just real quick, fish oils love to reduce inflammation. Magnesium loves to reduce inflammation. Berries like blackberries, blueberries, raspberries are really good to reduce inflammation. The Trinity foods, which is garlic, ginger, and turmeric, should be in all your athletes' diets every single day. So don't wait for the inflammation to come. Be on kind of like a maintenance, maybe do like a shake. I have a shake, maybe I'll give it to you, Hillary. It's called oose juice. All right. What I do is I take ginger and I steep it and I boil it. And then I'll put some garlic and turmeric in there and I'll make like a gallon of it and I'll stick it in my refrigerator and I'll make sure I do 12 ounces a day. Now, I play sports just like everybody else. I happen to play basketball a lot. So I will tell you is that if I eat a lot of anti-inflammatory foods like fish oils, let's say sushi. Let's say I have a sushi on Thursday, but I'm playing basketball on Thursday night. And I play hard for like 3 hours. I get out of bed very easily on Friday. No problem. If I don't have those omega-3 fatty acids, maybe I don't do sushi, I have a tough time getting out of bed on Friday because that inflammation takes over on my feet and my ankles. So I try to do like a maintenance thing of that. So that's how I reduce inflammation. Yes. Can you do ice? Sure. Ice certainly is a valid thing. 20 minutes on, 40 off, 20 on, 40 off. You bombard the area and that should help to reduce inflammation.
And Jeff, just for a second on ice, I've been reading more and more about how ice is not the best thing for reducing inflammation, that we shouldn't be using ice to reduce inflammation, that basically inflammation is a natural reaction and that you should let it run its course.
Yeah, great point, and you're absolutely right. We're just trying to give you some basic information here. Some people love absolutely ice and some people love heat and some people say let it run its natural course. There's many, many different articles out there that are contraindicating each other. I happen to be a big contrast bath guy. I love putting an athlete in cold, then putting them in hot, cold, and then finishing off at hot. At the Olympic training centers, by the way, they have these big pools. They have a cold tub and they have a hot tub, and it's called a contrast. But you are right. Listen, I go head to head with doctors on this all the time. From my personal experience, I'd rather do ice than anything else. Let's just say you were on the road and you did an event and your knee was really swollen. I personally think you can't go wrong with putting ice on it. It's not going to make it worse. If anything, it's going to make it better. Can you go wrong with putting heat on that? Absolutely, because the heat will increase inflammation and the knee will swell even more. So what I tell people on the road, try the ice, but don't do the heat. Plus, the whole thing is that when you put ice on for a fact, this is the factual part of ice. It is an analgesic, right? It basically numbs the area, right? So at least you're going to get a numb area that you have pain. Physiologically, what it's doing to the joint, you are right, can be debated, but I go with ice with most of my athletes.
Yeah, actually, I have to refine my comment because the research said putting ice on a joint for a certain time to reduce pain was fine, but they really said to stick away or stay away from putting it on muscle.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I could see that. There is a reaction, by the way. It's called Huntington's reaction. Has nothing to do with Huntington, Long Island, by the way. But Huntington's reaction is that if you do put ice more than about one study, more than about 15 minutes in one area, it will actually increase inflammation because the body goes into a mode like, oh, it's too cold. It's too cold. I got to generate more heat internally. And now you actually get more inflammation in the joint.
Mhm.
So I go with the ice. You know, I'm not a huge ice guy, but if I need it, I certainly use it. Tunnel to Towers, you know, you heard I was the medical director there. I order 15,000 pounds of ice. You know, it's a convenient thing too, by the way. I can't, you know, I have a staff of 100 people. I can't treat 3,000 people in 3 hours, right? Put the ice in the bag, tie it up, and there's your treatment. You know, go on your way. You know, when you're dealing with that many people, and it's almost like a psychological thing. Oh, the ice, it's helping me out. But I do understand your points, and I've debated this many times with a lot of different doctors.
Okay, thank you.
Right. So moving right down the line, shoulder, right? So we got the shoulder now. We know what's going on with that, right? With swimming, you know, I usually, 25 years, I've never had someone come into my office and said I was running and I hurt my shoulder. That doesn't happen, right? And runners are all lower extremity, but we do know like one of the number one injuries in swimmers are the shoulders. So I do want to educate you that there are 4 joints. A lot of people don't know this. There are 4 joints that make up the shoulder girdle. It's a girdle, right? It kind of sits right here. There's a joint in the middle called the SC joint, sternoclavicular joint. Hardly ever see those type of injuries, although I just had one. Guy fell and the 2 bones kind of compacted each other, had a whole bunch of inflammation on that joint. But that's one of the joints of the girdle. The high point of the shoulder, that's where you would separate a shoulder. It's called the AC joint. There's a big ball and socket here called the glenohumeral joint. That's where you would dislocate a shoulder. And then you have a 4th joint in the back is the scapula. It just kind of glides on the rib cage in the back. It kind of glides there. So you have 4 joints that make up the shoulder girdle. Now, can you fall off a bike with an outreached arm and the shoulder goes up and you separate that AC joint? Yes, I've seen that. You know, could you fall off a bike and your shoulder externally rotated back and you basically took that ball right out of the socket, a dislocated shoulder? Yeah, that does happen. I happen to work with a lot of hockey players. I'm not kidding you. I probably put back over 200 dislocated shoulders because hockey players, they're checking. They're constantly getting checked and then the ball comes out of the socket. And I probably put back about 100 AC joints right on the ice because I cover the games live and I go out there. There's maneuvers that you do. It's very painful, but you got to basically move the arms in different direction and the joint just kind of goes back on its own. So those are just kind of just cross-referencing different sports. But you're doing this, right? You're swimming, right? Are those 4 joints affected? Yes, it's a girdle. They all hinge off each other. So we got to make sure that all 4 are working correctly. There are 4 famous muscles, though, on the back of the shoulder called the rotator cuffs. They look like fingers. They come in the back and they kind of attach here on the side. That seems to be a very, very popular injury in swimmers because you are going against resistance, right? You're going, 1 gallon of water, as you probably know, weighs 8 pounds. So when that arm comes out of the water and you're going down into resistance, you're going down into 24, 32, whatever gallons of water, and you're getting that resistance going down, those muscles contract. So we have to make sure from an injury prevention standpoint those muscles have to have good stability. The scapula in the back has to have good stability. Now, I don't want to like pop off with this comment, but I believe I am exposed to the best shoulder rehabilitation program in the world, not just in Nassau County, Suffolk County, in the world. I'm trained by a guy by the name of Tom House. Tom House works with Drew Brees and Tom Brady very intimately. So it's Tom Brady's shoulder program. He works with about 60 Major League Baseball players. And if you've ever seen a movie called $1 Million Arm, which is about going to India, Major League Baseball sent 2 people over to India because there's 1.2 billion people in India to basically see if we could get somebody who plays cricket. Cricket's kind of got the same motion as baseball. Maybe we could get a cricket player and come over here and play in MLB. So Tom House was in that movie. So I don't want to go into how you would prevent it, but Hillary, if any of your members want that program, have them call me directly. I have videos of all of it. It's very unique, isometric contractions of the muscle. Again, if Tom Brady's doing it, I'm doing it, right? One of the greatest athletes of all time. So that's my shoulder rehab program. So if anybody's interested, or maybe you bring me back another time where we could do a group fitness class. I just did it today in Bethpage for 1 hour. We did Brady's shoulder program and people just absolutely love it. And it's not easy. It is very hard. For instance, when we do this and we squeeze, I don't know if you see me shaking, you have to shake. I'm squeezing that hard, but most of the movements are about these isometric contractions where you're pulling so hard that the muscles are shaking, they're grabbing onto the bone, and it gives you great stability. If you are a swimmer and you want longevity, that is the program for you. So just think that you have that resource here. Just really, really good stuff. And after you do it for an hour, you're going to be completely spent. Now, that program, by the way, by doing these different movements, very unique movements, you'll never get injured. I didn't put 200 pounds. I didn't have you lift 200 pounds over your head. I didn't have you do overhead presses or lateral slides. All I had you do is use your own body weight. An isometric means sustaining a contraction. I'm not putting you through this full range of motion. So what I tell people in that program, what you put in it is what you get out of it. You get any of Tom Brady's books. That's the first statement in it, by the way. What you put in it is what you get out of it. And you could go really hard on it. It's very, very effective to reduce the shoulder injuries. Does anybody have any questions about shoulders? Okay, good. Moving right along. Elbow. Okay, again, not a big thing that we're going to see in elbow, but when you're swimming, some people might use their wrist a lot, and now their wrists are kind of flapping all over, and you could wind up getting maybe a golfer's elbow, a little inflammation inside the elbow, a little inflammation on the outside of the elbow called tennis elbow. These little bony projections on everybody has these bony projections, are a site for tendons. So if you are using your hands a lot, grasping that bicycle, by the way, there could be some stress coming, handlebars, coming up into those elbows. So that's a flexibility thing. That's things that you have to do where you take your arm, maybe go into a wall, maybe take your wrist and do something like this. I like grabbing like this. We're back to Brady's thing where you just kind of, it's called walk the dog, where you go side to side. Anything pulling back the fingers are going to start working the origins and insertions of those tendons in there. So you don't want to get that. I've been biking myself, and I know that I'm grabbing the bars a little tight, and my forearms are starting to go a little numb there because there is a nerve there. Everybody knows the funny bone. There is a nerve here called the ulnar nerve. Sometimes you could get that inflamed, grasping, and then you kind of get that traveling pain, usually into like the 2 fingers, the pinky and the ring finger. So those are elbow injuries, okay? Moving right along. So we got the shoulder, right? We got the wrist, again, grasping. Anytime you're grasping, so that is the bicycle, or anytime you're moving the hand that's doing this, and that could happen from swimming. Again, the wrist has 6 range of motions. The wrist does this, the wrist does this. Extending, flexing, deviating to one side, that's called ulnar deviation, deviating to the other side, that's called radial deviation, and then palm up, that's called supination, palm down, that's called pronation. When I do my fitness classes, I just do range of motion exercise for the wrist. I'll have the people stand like this rapidly. You do this for 1 minute. Palms up, palms down, palms up. You're going to start right now. I'm starting to feel a little fatigue already in my elbow and my wrist. I'll just do the motions. Go in, go out, go in, go out. But rapidly, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Do that like 50 times. Then I like to do this one. This is just called walk the dog, where I'll just go one side to another, one side to another. I'll do that 50 times. And ultimately, when I do these workouts, I'm doing a full body workout. I just don't isolate one area. So that's the wrist, okay? Moving right to the mid-back. We got to throw the mid-back in there for a couple of reasons. The mid-back needs to have mobility in it, which means movement. Now, we all know what's going on in society. We are on computers all day long. We're texting a lot. We're sitting a lot. We're going to get into that with the hips. And it really wreaks havoc on the mid-back. The mid-back means mobility. So, Stephen, let me ask you a quick question. Out of everything I'm saying here, and we got to talk about more, what do you think the most dysfunctional body part is in a human being in the United States?
Most dysfunctional or functional?
Dysfunctional. Is it the feet? Is it the ankle? Is it the knee? Is it the hip? Is it the back? Is it the mid-back? Is it the shoulder? Is it the elbow? Is it the wrist?
I'm gonna guess and say back.
Mid-back. The mid-back, not the lower back.
Yeah.
And the reason why is that's a whole postural thing. Just people are just sitting incorrectly and just have really, really bad posture. The reason why we say that is that I test people all the time because that mid-back needs mobility, needs movement in it. And now you're on a bicycle, right? And you got those rounded shoulders. I'm sure some of your people are coming up off the bike with mid-back pain. I know I do. And the reason why you're coming off mid-back pain is because those mid-back vertebra need movement. So one of the recommendations I would do is if you don't have a foam roller, you got to get one. Get a really, really rigid foam roller and put it on that lower back. Oh, I just happen to have a TB12, Tom Brady TB12 foam roller. All right, I love Tom Brady. He's just an awesome athlete, and I just love what he's doing to his body. And when you get a little bit older, you gravitate to those older athletes. But this is a foam roller, and you just put it on your lower back, and you roll your back. It's almost like rolling it out like pizza dough, which will give you a little bit of mobility in the mid-back. So that would be a recommendation before you get on that bicycle, because you are in that hunch position. So the most dysfunctional body part is the mid-back.
What do you think of the chirp wheel? Have you seen those big chirp wheels?
Yeah, the wheels, yeah, they're anything that's going to get in there and kind of grind it out and iron it out like the pizza dough, you know, that's really good. I actually made, let me see if I have it. I'm going to go off camera for a second. 1 second. So yeah, the mid-back is really dysfunctional. So, yeah, I'm actually trying to patent this. Don't show anybody this. You got to sign a disclosure. Hillary, get him a disclosure going, all right? You know, I do work with a lot of golfers, so I don't want to pigeonhole myself with golfing, but it's probably the best market you could ever be with. If I go to a triathlon and say, hey, you got to buy 10 sessions of hyperbaric for $1,000, a triathlete would probably, I'm not sure. I go to a golfer that's at a country club, you know, average person making, you know, a lot of more money, and they're like, oh yeah, I'm in. you know, it's just that they're more in tune to spend money, a lot quicker golfers. So it's a great sport as far as marketing goes. But I don't know if you see this. This is just golf balls. You see it?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's just golf balls. I drilled holes in the golf balls, right? And this is one of my foam rollers, right? And you could roll on your forearm and stuff like that. But you could also take that stick off, put it in the middle. These are two big golf balls, and then you roll your mid back on these golf balls. So this is foam rolling. So why is it the most dysfunctional? It's the posture. And I'm involved with a company called Titleist Performance Institute that has evaluated, I think, about 700,000 people with like mobility and stability, full body assessments, and it goes in a database. And like 89% of the 700,000 people had mobility problems in their mid back. So you have to be really careful. Yes.
Could you talk a little bit about the hyperbaric chamber just for a moment? I mean,
Sure.
personally, I love it, and I don't know if it's open yet, but I'm in.
Yeah. The hyperbaric chamber is just it's a big resource for us in the inflammatory arena. We talked about inflammation. So I know we talked about ice, but oxygen, when oxygen goes into an area that's inflamed, it cleans up the inflammation. Inflammation does not like oxygen at all. So we have a hyperbaric chamber in my office that we put athletes in there. They're our treatments, and it reduces all the inflammation. So it's a recovery tool. We use it for recovery. We have it at the US Open. And, you know, we have about 4 chambers at the US Open, 4 players in, 4 players out, 4 players in, like all day long it goes on with the chamber. So we're using it for that, to reduce inflammation and get you back as quick as possible from a recovery standpoint.
Jeff, we lost you. Your camera's not on.
Okay, good. All right. Did you see the golf ball thing?
Yeah, we saw the golf ball and then we lost
okay.
you. Oh, there
My
we
bad.
are again.
Okay, sorry about that.
In terms of the hyperbaric chamber too, I
Yeah.
found for me, when I did it before a big event, I had so much energy.
Yeah. Listen, the more oxygen you have in your body, it's kind of a mirror. By the way, oxygen is a drug. All right. It's classified as a drug. So God forbid if you ever had a heart attack and they put an oxygen mask on, it's a drug in that arena. So when someone does have a heart attack, what do they give you right away? Oxygen, because they know the oxygen was deprived. The muscle's going to die. Let's get the oxygen in there as quick as possible. The other thing they were using it for burn centers, when people had, really traumatic burn injuries, they were putting them in hyperbarics and it was revitalizing the tissue. So to answer your question, the more oxygen you have, it's going to give you more energy. One of the biggest things that I get on the first treatment on the hyperbaric is they never slept so good in their life. A lot of people have they can't sleep well, and I'm not using it for that at all. They come back and I'm like, hey, how was the first treatment? And they say, I don't know, man, but I slept like 10 hours straight. Well, we're kind of just purifying the body with more oxygen. Again, that could lead to more energy for sure. So,
Thank you.
okay.
Yep.
All right. So we're off the mid back. Let's go to the lower back. Lower back. So let me give you the numbers. It's about 3 to 5 times your body weight into your lower back when you run. We shouldn't even put this segment on because that kind of gets in people's heads, but I need your people to know this, right? So it's, let's just say 3 times to make it simple. So if you weigh 100 pounds, it's 300 pounds of pressure into your toes and your ankles and your hips and your lower back. That's the compressional force. So number one, you need to be the right weight, right? You need to do that BMI, right? The BMI, the body mass index. If you do it, which is your height in meter divided by your weight in kilograms and square that number, should be below 25. If you're 26 to 29, you're obese, not obese, you're overweight. Above 30, you're obese. So let me go over that again. BMI. 25 or less, good weight. 26 to 29, overweight. Above 30, obese. Okay. So I'm a little concerned with people that are obese, let's say, and they're running, and they're running and they get that compressional force. So one of the things I would do as a triathlete is, make sure you get in, don't run on the street every day. Maybe twice a week you're on the road. Twice a week, go find yourself a 10-foot pool, wherever that would be. I don't know, Eisenhower, I guess. Put a flotation device on there and run up and down in the pool where your feet are never compressing. That'd be great. That'd be a great thing to do. Or run on a boardwalk that has a little give to it. You have to be smart. I got to think about my number in the beginning. 1,000 hours, right? 2 musculoskeletal injuries. Now, in the Olympic training centers, they have a treadmill called the Alta G. Fantastic. It's about a $150,000 treadmill, and you get on the Alta G, and it actually suspends you in the air. You could actually dictate what you want to run. I work with this one girl who was a Paralympic athlete, 5,000 meter, and her coach told me she was 140 pounds. He said, I want to run her at 40 pounds today. And we put her on the Alta G, and we put it at 40 pounds. So there was none of that compressional force there. But you go back, the back is, part of the core. It's the center of gravity. So you got to make sure that core and center of gravity could offset these weaknesses. All right. So think about cross training with the running. Think about getting in a pool. Think about maybe using an elliptical. Think about maybe using a row machine to keep your cardio up. Don't pound the pavements 5 days a week or 6 days a week. I think that might give you some longevity. Okay. Then we go down into the hips. The hips are balls and sockets. And these hips have to rotate internally and externally. Right now in America, the number one orthopedic surgery is total hip replacements.
Mhm.
I was a basketball player. I go to my reunions all the time. 75% of my friends that played basketball, I'm still trying to play, they all had hip replacements. So the thing with the hip replacement, this is where, I don't know if anybody's ever worked with a chiropractor. The chiropractor is very critical in the injury prevention arena. Because if you ever had trauma in your body, please seek out a chiropractor, because you could have had trauma maybe in your hips, and that ball and socket got shifted a little bit. Instead of being like this, it may be shifted like that. And you had pain for 2 to 3 days, and then the pain went away. Now you have a hip that's a little off center. That's like a car tire that hit a curb. What's going to happen to the tire when the tire hits the curb? It's going to prematurely wear out. So a chiropractor really hones into trauma and says, okay, let me see if anything shifted and let me get it back into place. But the hip joints, again, there's just so many people are going for that, and you need mobility in those hips. So we do a test to see how well those hips go in and out. And I'm going to tell you right now, this is what we find on people. This is what it should look on in a person. The hip should go in 45 degrees and the hip should go out 45 degrees. That would be great movement. When we test people, this is what we find. One might do this, and then the other one's like this, 10 or 15 degrees. So what we're really concerned about that is if that is you, that has to be addressed. So I get that patient coming into my office. It's the same story. Oh, I'm 59 years old. I'm 56 years old. I got to go for total hip replacements. Doc, how did this happen to me? I'm in great shape. I'm running all the time. I'm doing yoga. And then I look at that and I say, oh, I know why, because this thing was like stuck for 30 years and it just prematurely worn out there. So think about that. If you need, I have assessments for all of this stuff. Can you see me standing up? I want to show you the assessment for the hip. Can you see me?
Yes, we can see you.
You can see my waist down here?
Yes, we do.
Okay, good. Thank God I got the pants on, Hillary.
Seriously, Jeff.
Okay, right. I'm on my right tippy toe right now. You can see, you see this little window here? You see me making this window?
Uh-huh.
That's your hip. This is the test. It's very easy. You can look in the mirror. What you do is you put your hands on your waist and you rotate as far as you can go to the right. And what I'm looking for here, I'm looking to get an angle on that hip. By the way, when I rotate, I'm probably at about 40 degrees. Then what I'll do is I'll go and I'll rotate all the way to the left. And by the way, I'm not 40 degrees here. I'm about 20 degrees. So I'm actually lost some movement. I'm going to tell you why. Because I did 4 million jump shots. I went up and I went down on that hip, up and down. I do have a lot of arthritis in there just from compression. That's called a lower quarter test. And you could do that in the mirror. You can do it on yourself. And if you see that there's asymmetry from right to left, that's not a good thing. You're basically going to be exposed to that potential wearing out of the hip. So that's called a lower quarter test. So that's the hip. Got some cool exercises for that too. I have an exercise called starfish, where you get on the ground. All my hip exercises, by the way, are non-weight bearing. Think about that. If you had hip pain, you don't want to do weight bearing exercise. It's only going to hurt it more. You got to get on the ground. And I do this thing called starfish, which is just basically taking the balls and going in and out. I do another exercise called windshield wipers. Well, I'll just take your legs and you go in and out with your legs, and you're just taking the balls and sockets. Again, non-weight bearing, moving that. Because, by the way, arthritis loves when you do nothing. Like if you have arthritis, which arthritis, by the way, is just a decrease in joint space. There's a space in between the joints and the space decreases. So it loves when you do nothing. If you don't move, it just gets worse. It's like a hinge on a door. You got to oil that hinge and you got to move that hinge. So I do most of my hip work on the floor. Now, different degrees of arthritis. Let me just throw that out. Grade 1, grade 2, grade 3. Grade 1, a little bit of destruction in the joint, a little decrease in the joint space. Grade 2, a little bit more decrease in space. Grade 3, bone on bone, I can't help you. I can help you out with a 1 and a 2. If you have a grade 3 bone on bone, that's sandpaper on sandpaper, you're going to the ortho and you're getting the total hip replacement. So we want to make sure you don't get close to, the 2. And again, my recommendation would be do some of these non-weight bearing exercises just to keep it stimulated, right? The worse you don't move, it's just going to get worse. Okay, so that's your hips, balls, and sockets. Going down to the knees. So, the back and the hip and the knees and the foot, this is more the running exercises. The knee is just 2 big bones that come together. It's a hinge joint, and you have really big, thick ligaments on the outside. You might have heard of them, called medial collateral ligaments, MCL. They're like size of my fingers that sit on the outside of the knee. You have them on the inside too, medial and lateral collateral ligaments. You have 2 big cross-looking structures behind your kneecap, ACL, PCL. By the way, ACL stands for anterior cruciate ligament. PCL stands for posterior cruciate. Cruciate means cross. So it's just a cross right behind your knee, okay? And then you have the meniscus, which in between the joints, you have 2 circular discs called meniscus, which a lot of runners get little tears or cracks in the meniscus. So we're back to the weight distribution, but we didn't mention this. We're back to the biomechanics of your running style. There is what's called the gait cycle, by the way. The gait cycle is heel strike first, the whole foot then hits. That's called mid stance. And then you got toe off. A lot of times with this stance, the foot just doesn't go like this naturally. Sometimes the foot might cave in, pronation. Sometimes the foot would go out, supination, and that starts to put different stresses on those ligaments I just discussed with you. So we got to make sure you don't have a ligament injury. So my favorite exercise to do for a preparatory for the knee is just called the box drill. Think of a big box. Can you see my knee like this? Can you see my knee?
No, well, yeah, I think we can figure it out. Go ahead.
Right,
Just
so
so-
think about if I took my leg and I had a big box here and I put my foot in the box, right?
Uh-huh.
I would take my knee like this and I'd make sure I hit every corner of the box. Right? And I would do it
Okay.
clockwise. Like I would do maybe 20 clockwise and then 20 counterclockwise. I'm just taking my knee and I'm hitting the corners of the box. By the way, if I stood up again, that's the 4 ways you would hurt yourself. You hurt your knee 4 ways. It's either going to go this way, it's going to go out, it's going to go forward, or it's going to go back like a hyperextension. So the box drill gives you a little memory in the knee, just in case you have to, or you're going to have an injury. At least it's preparing the knee for that. So meniscus is a big thing, and the ACL is a big thing, and you just have to be careful with the gait cycle. We could, you could just take a video and see how your foot, a little coach. I don't know if you're dealing with any running coaching, but they could actually change your gait cycle a little bit to reduce the incident of you, getting injuries. And that's really what it's about, with these injuries. With your group is that you have to have a team around you, right? Or you have you who's doing all your stuff and the marketing and pulling everything together. Okay. You're the administrator. Okay. Well, maybe I'm the medical person. Okay. Let's bring a medical person in who consults with our team. Let's bring a nutritionist in who consults with our team. Let's bring a really good manual therapist who consults with our team. Let's bring a sports psychologist who reports to our team. That's why I love working with these professional athletes, because that's what they all have, 10 or 12 professions all around it. Again, I was just down at the Walker Cup, these great players, and they had it all. They had one kid had a power coach just to generate rotary power in this kid's body. One person to do that. Then he had a flexibility coach just to give him flexibility. Then he had a medical professional, just like me, just to, it was amazing. This kid's like 19 years old and he's got like 15 different people around it. So I know, you're amateurs and you're not professionals, but I love the way you're running this group and bringing people in. So you should have these resources that you could all bounce about. And that's what happened with the Olympic training centers when I covered it. Whenever I touched an athlete, the coach was the pope of the program. The coach goes, okay, I want to run her at 40 pounds. She's got a little bursitis on the heel bone. She needs to do this exercise. She usually gets this adjustment. He dictated the whole thing to me. And I love that. It was great. And then after I was done, I went back to the coach and I said, yeah, coach, you were right. She did have that heel thing, blah, 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 blah. And it's just a team approach, really, what it comes down to.
You know what I'd like to do, Jeff? I'd like to bring you back and just focus on runners, like the running portion of it,
Yeah.
the feet, the legs, because I don't think we have enough time to do that. I'd really like to open this up to questions.
Yeah.
This has been fantastic. So thank you. Any questions about anything that Dr. Jeff has covered so far?
So Jeff, if you have knee issues and you're a runner, is there any benefit, let's say if you're a heel striker, is there any benefit to changing your stride so that you become more of a midfoot or, toe runner?
Yeah, I would do trial and error on that, right? I would change the cycle, right? I would be there side by side with you, change the cycle, and then see what kind of response. Is there pain if you changed it, right? And listen, getting on a stopwatch on somebody and seeing what times they could do, that's like classic, is really, really important, right? To see actually, do you get faster? Now we do a thing, called ground reaction force. We have these force plates to see how long your foot actually stays on the ground. And the quicker that foot gets off the ground, the quicker you're going to be as far as running. So yeah, it's a trial and error. You have to figure it out. My job is to work around the injury. How do we do that? Well, maybe we have to change the gait cycle, right? To work around that injury. So.
Okay, thanks.
Anybody else?
Can I finish off the foot so I could just be done?
Okay, go ahead, do it. Go for it.
Yeah, you know, not to like, again, not to come off, whatever. You know, I just can't see somebody that could match our experience in the running world for one reason. Been the medical director of the Tunnel to Towers. We have for 20 years. We average about 40,000 runners. I've controlled and, you know, was in charge of the safety and the treatments of over 800,000 runners. I just don't know anybody that could rival that number unless you're the medical director for the New York City Marathon. So what I've seen in those 20 years of just a 5K is just incredible. In fact, I kept the statistics. I have a running log of what I've seen. By the way, West Point starts that race. They release 4,000 cadets. And just a side story, I don't want to get intimate with the story, but the cadets run with really, really bad footwear. Sometimes they run with boots. And where do you think we see most of the injuries is with those cadets? And I've talked to the commandant of cadets and some high up people at West Point saying, listen, footwear is really, really poor here, you know, with the military, because all kinds of things happen. But the foot problems we do see, Achilles tendonitis, number one, sometimes called the big heel cord, right? There's that big, thick tendon that sits in the back of the heel. When that thing gets inflamed, that's debilitating. A classic Achilles tendon situation would be like you're sleeping and you go to put your foot down, that first foot step, and you're like, oh. And over time, during the course of the day, it loosens up a little bit, but that could be debilitating. If you rupture an Achilles tendon, bye-bye for like at least a year. So you really have to pay attention. There is a thing called an avulsion fracture where the tendon actually pulls off the bone. And that surgery is not, you know, is tough surgery, and it's 1 year out. So if I said you only had like 2 minutes a day to work on something, work on your Achilles tendon. You might have heard of plantar fasciitis. Here's the heel, right? The heel bone. There is a covering around the heel bone called the fascia. It almost looks like a piece of cellophane, and the cellophane can pull off the bone. And that's what's called plantar fasciitis. Very, very common injury in runners. And that has to do, by the way, tight Achilles tendon usually leads into plantar fasciitis. And then if you don't take care of it, you wind up getting a bone spur. And then you got to surgically remove it. And then the last thing I would probably say is you could get some neuromas. Neuroma, nerve is nerve, and oma is kind of like a little, not that it's a benign tumor, but the nerves, there's little small tiny nerves in your toes, and they could ball up and you get a neuroma, and that really, really hurts. It's in between the toes. And we have a podiatrist on staff, so I usually throw a lot of my foot problems to him, but he'll inject the neuroma with a steroid. He has to sometimes surgically remove that bone spur I just told you about. And occasionally he does the surgery on the Achilles tendon rupture. And I see that person come in 2 weeks post-op, you know, with the foot up in the air with all the stitches in the back. And that's a problem. But I think I hit, you know, joint by joint. I think I went through every joint in the body and just kind of give you a little warm up of future things we could do with you.
Awesome. Awesome. Anybody have any quick questions before we end? Steve.
Hi, my name is Steve. I'm just beginning to come back into doing running from a chronic plantar fasciitis issue. I have a little bit of a team. I had some PT, I have a foot doctor, I have a chiropractor, and you know they're all advising, you know, go very gently, try and avoid pounding, trails, ellipticals, things like that. Anything specific you would advise? You know, really, I'm almost starting from zero. Haven't really run in many, many months.
I'm sure you're going to some great doctors there, but one of the things I'm seeing, has anybody focused on the knee at all related to the plantar fascia?
No.
Okay, yeah. So can you see me? I'll stand up again. Like I should be able to see myself, can't I?
You should be able to.
See myself. I might be able to help you out. Can you see my leg?
Yeah.
Can you see it now?
Yep.
Okay. So I want to tell you how you get fasciitis, first of all. You have a tight calf. You see me touching the calf, right? Right? This tight calf then comes into the Achilles tendon here. You see my foot? I have no socks on. You see that?
No,
No.
we don't see a foot.
See it now?
Fortunately.
Yeah? All right. Tight calf comes down here and pulls on your heel.
Mm.
Shifts your heels, and then puts stress on your fascia on your heel.
Mm.
But where is this originating from? It's originating up here from your knee.
Mm.
Okay. So you're probably getting some treatment maybe down here, but the origination of this injury is coming from the calf that is attaching to the knee. So what you have to do every day, and I'm telling you, I've helped a lot of people with this conversation. You have to do a bench straight leg raiser, which basically means this. You see my leg is bent? Okay. You have a towel on your toes. You lock your knee out in the bent position where it comes up here to 180 degrees, and then you pull your toes back. That's going to stretch here at the knee. That's an isolated stretch from here. Because the quicker you take the tension off here, it's going to take the tension off your heel. Try that. I think that's going to be effective for you.
That's a straight leg,
No, bent leg.
bent leg.
Yeah, you're at 90 degrees. Here, look, 90 degrees. And then
Right.
you take the leg and go all the way up. And then pull. Not a straight leg raiser.
Got it.
Because I want to isolate. When you bend it, you isolate those tendons here. Okay?
Okay,
Because that's the main culprit of the fasciitis.
I'll try that.
He who follows the point of pain is lost. Keep that in mind. A lot of times people go to the source. This is the source. The source of pain is here in the back, in the back, in the back. But where's the cause? It might be coming from the neck. It might be coming from somewhere else. So I find out that calf up at the knee causes the fasciitis. Try it.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Dr.
Okay.
Jeff.
right.
Why don't you give out your information in case anybody wants to come by?
Sure. Yeah, my office number is 631-598-7034. I do have a website. It's Dr. Dr. Jeff, Jeff, and then my last name, Poplarski, POPLARSKI.com. And I'm in South Amityville. If I could help any of you out, you could email me. It's drjpop@gmail, drjpop, P-O-P. I'll help you out anytime I can. You send me an email, I'd be more than happy. The only thing I don't do with emails is, because I have 17 email addresses, I'm not kidding you. It's just too much. When I get an email, I just fire back and I say, call me directly. Human to human interactions. I'll give you 10 minutes of my time and then we move on. I just can't stand there and just type answers out. So, and I think people appreciate that.
Dr. Jeff is very good with text messages. Okay, so what I'm going to do is we're going to have you back and we're going to do this Brody shoulder program.
Brady.
Brody.
Brody.
No, that's sports. All right. Anyway.
All right. God bless you all. Have a healthy day.
Have a good day.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.